Hey Patrick, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Just
And
got
you
back
say
from
you
my
say
work.
a rule? Is that how it works?
Yeah, a rule.
Okay, sounds good. Uh, Here comes Austin. Hi, Austin. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
How are you doing?
good. Good.
Good.
Thanks for putting this together.
Oh yeah.
And we probably won't need to depart this first chat that you set up on Zoom to go to the second one. It's just I
Okay.
encouraged you to find a spot where there's two slots contiguous. So
Got it. Okay.
I was wondering why there were two invites, but I think I figured it out.
yeah, the Calendly link, I've got it set up for half-hour slots just as a because often things that we want to talk about are easy enough to do in a half hour. But if you need longer, then it's handy or if you think you might need longer, it's
Mhm.
worth looking for two open spots back to back. I know you had other folks invited. I don't know whether you're planning to have them all come or if you want to.
Yeah,
I'm at your disposal. So
I'm pretty sure they're all planning to come. Some might just be
no, we're right on.
audio
We're
only.
ahead of schedule here, right? We're before it's even time.
Yeah.
So where are you at in the arc of your collegiate experience and your EWB experience?
So I'm a junior right now, and I basically how our chapter is kind of structured is um, we don't have let seniors hold officer positions.
Mhm.
And so I'll probably kind of step back a little bit this next year. And but I'll still help out in whatever way I can. So
Great. Hi, Rachel. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little soft, but we can hear you.
Sounds good.
Here comes Logan.
yeah, I think we're just waiting for Ben. I think he said he was just doing the audio only though.
Haven't seen him pop up yet.
Okay. Well, you can probably get started. I assume he'll be okay.
Okay. So Alex House gave me a brief introduction to you guys by email, but I'm happy to field questions or talk through my experience with Outreach International, which is limited in direct field experience to our work together with their Alcance, Nicaragua team in Nicaragua. But I understand that you guys are looking at, you've done Bolivia or worked on Bolivia projects and are looking at exploring the relationship with Alcance there. So I can certainly speak to my experience with the team in Nicaragua and what I understand to be the generic approach or common approach that they would have. So do you want me to just run through a little bit of background, a thumbnail sketch?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah, I think
it?
that'd be good.
So I'm a member of the San Francisco professional chapters, and when I was getting ready to retire from my career at Lawrence Livermore National Lab, I threw my hat in the ring to be a co-lead for what we called appropriate technology design team projects. And so sort of a below the radar of headquarters, but it was a set of projects, a project portfolio that was intended to pick up people who are more product designers rather than the classic civil structural infrastructure kind of thing. And so when we started evaluating that portfolio of projects, we discovered that composting latrines, which can go either way, I've seen them be in infrastructure projects, or in this case, they were in this bucket, were still looked like they were viable. And we checked, and Alcance, Nicaragua was our cooperating organization and our contact with the community. And so I traveled there in 2014 and met with the team, and we did 14 of a new, less expensive one together that the community and the Alcance members had come up with. So it was a much less expensive design, if you want to think of it locally, vernacular, value engineered kind of an approach to making it work at a price point that they liked better. At that same time, they showed me a really nice little well that they had in the community that had a hand pump on it, and we identified this as a potential project. And so we came back and pitched it to our San Francisco professional leadership team, and then adopted that policy, that program, if you want to think of it that way. And worked together to put in replace the hand pump with a new submersible pump, connect it to power, pump it to elevated storage, and then distribute it throughout the community to about 50 plus tap stands, a few pressure brake tanks, and so forth. And then we followed up on that. We just had a team that was there with, unfortunately, an unsuccessful attempt to get a deeper well, hoping to increase the availability of water supply to this community. But all through that, and through 2 more rounds of composting latrines, Alcance, Nicaragua has been our primary contact with the community, although Nicaragua also has its own country office with EWB, so they're extremely helpful as well. But what I really like about Alcance, and I presume this is the approach that they would be using in Bolivia as well, is that they are extraordinarily good community facilitators and organizers, and they're not trying to push their own agenda. They're really open to what are the community needs, and then how to help the community organize around those needs, develop strength and leadership capacity, seek resources to help get those needs met, and so forth. So that's been my background and my experience with them, and they've been extremely good partners from my perspective. So that's my kickoff kind of thing to perhaps prime the pump for questions.
Yeah. So I had a couple questions. How things work with that. Are members of that group actually traveling with you to Nicaragua, or is
So
this?
the team in Nicaragua is based there, so they live in the communities that we've worked in, or live close by them, and are embedded in them, if you want to think of it that way. The Outreach International home office in Kansas City is their headquarters, but then they have field teams like the one in Nicaragua, like the one in Bolivia, and so forth, that work in those countries.
Okay.
And so in the case of Nicaragua, they have two offices close by areas where we've deployed composting latrines, and close to the immediately adjacent to where this well project, the water supply project that I discussed. And so they know, and they're not just coming in from afar, from the capital of the community of the country or something and dropping in occasionally. They are deeply embedded in those communities.
So I was kind of curious how the communities like think about these people coming in for leadership guidance, because I'd be kind of worried about imposing like a different leadership structure on something that they've already been doing for a long time.
Yeah, and I think it's an excellent question. In the case of the communities in Nicaragua where we've worked in, the Alcance has been working in those communities to facilitate leadership. So they are, if you want to think of it, hand in glove partners with the existing community leadership. Typically, it may be a group that's interested in, sanitation, water and sanitation, or hygiene, particularly for the composting latrines. Or in the case of the water system, there'd been a longstanding effort by both community leaders and the Alcance teams working with them to try and improve the water supply in the community. So it was not an imposed sort of a thing. It was more organic and grew out of the fact that there are these facilitators who've worked with the community over time to develop trust and solid partnerships. And so that's been our experience in Nicaragua on the ground. I can't speak for directly how it works in Bolivia.
Did this group, were they initially around when this project was started, or did they kind of come in later after you've done some work?
They had worked with the community. In the case of the composting latrines were done a little differently. It's a modality that's a little different than the standard EWB ICP process. So, but for the water supply project, the community-based group, the water board, if you want to think of it, who administered the little well, and Alcance put together the application to go to EWB headquarters. So there was the community-based organization being the water board. Then there's the NGO being Alcance, working with us as the known interested chapter that was looking to be able to see that application come in and apply for it. So that's how they were teamed from the beginning in their approach to EWB.
And so you have ties with Rotary International as well then?
I do. I'm a Rotary Club member in Livermore, is my club in Livermore, California. We're in District 5170. And so we've used Rotary Global grants in some instances for 2 rounds of composting latrines, and also as partial funding for the water supply system improvements.
Were those so those were like big grants that anyone could apply for?
They're a particular kind of grant that Rotary offers, Rotary International offers, that really it requires 2 Rotary clubs, one in the country of interest and one somewhere else that's typically the Deeper Pockets Club. And then they put together, in these cases, what are called global grants that are primarily funded with prior year funds that Rotarians have donated to Rotary International, to the Rotary Foundation, in a particular bucket of funds that then come back to the Rotarians in that district and are available for grant making the clubs, if you will, are pledging their share of that district designated funds, which could come back to them. And if they're successful, if they meet the sustainability and have a good community assessment, good balanced community assessment, and have the right kind of metrics, then then that's got good prospects for having a partial matching from the Rotary Foundation to get like an 80% match on those funds. So they come in minimums of 30K up to a couple 100K or so. But you can't just walk in off the street and do one of those grants. You have to, they're done by the Rotary clubs. When we've been involved as EWB, we've been involved as a cooperating organization.
So if we wanted to try to go down that road, like, would you suggest finding just kind of working with the local Rotary organization? There's one in Lawrence near our school, and then also one in the greater Kansas City area.
Yeah, those are your first places to start. They'll typically have an international service chair or a world community service committee that is interested in doing international projects, and they may or may not have pet projects or the other thing I should say is these Rotary grants have to line up with what are called areas of focus, and they work well when they can be put together with EWB, because often water and sanitation, I mean, that's a specific explicit area of focus, and it's kind of a bread and butter area for many EWB projects as well. I'm not quite sure what the communities you're working with are interested in, but there are several. You can do some homework and Google what the Rotary areas of focus are and see what they are, and see whether there's a good fit. And then it's important to have a good, reliable, solid partner in the country, a good Rotary Club partner in the country, because Rotary likes to do these projects. And it makes sense from our perspective to have that on the ground partner, because Rotary Club members typically are well connected, know the communities, are inclined to do international service or community service, and often are community leaders as well. So they can be very helpful allies in doing work in country.
Yeah, I didn't know that Rotary has locations like in countries like Nicaragua and other places like that.
They do. They have them all over the world. Nicaragua is a kind of a tough nut right now because the authoritarian Ortega regime is making it very difficult for Rotary clubs to function. It just made it, he's just got a strident approach to NGOs in particular. It has made it very difficult for Alcance in Nicaragua to operate there as well, but they so far are continuing to be able to do so. But it's a constantly changing game for them in difficult terrain. But I don't think that problem is extant in Bolivia.
Yeah, I think when we were in Uganda this past March, we actually drove by a Rotary office in a city kind of on the way back to the airport. So it was a little surprising for me too. I wasn't aware of that, but yeah.
Yeah, they've got clubs all over the world, so it's so they can be a great partner in that context. So, and particularly for doing these global grants, there are prerequisites. You've got to have them. You've got to have a club that's willing to step up and agree to partner with you, and you want one that's not just willing to do so, but it's good if you can find one with a track record and a strong shown demonstrated capacity to execute these kind of projects. That's even better.
So back to the Outreach International group, how would like a partnership with them typically start? Like, would we have to make sure that there's a group within the company, within the country, that would be able to work with us? I guess that made it sound like there already is. But how those relationships with the community like start and
I
yeah.
think there it would be important to talk with them about how they're configured and how they would see that unfolding. Our relationship with them was began before my time with the composting latrines. The prior individuals had made contact and established a relationship with them and gone and worked with them to do the first round of prototype composting latrines. And so I had the luxury of stepping into that relationship with the partnership already identified and build on it. So that was my experience. And so it was really, it started with contacts that were already handed to me that I could then explore and get to know and so forth. And so that's how that evolved for us. So in your case, it would be, I think, as a starting point, checking in with the people at Outreach International for the introductions and whatever background you need to be able to make the contacts and find out, explore the partnering potential. I think that it is, my own experience with them is that there are just real benefits and for the kind of collaboration that can happen between Engineers Without Borders, the community partners, and the Alcance, Bolivia in this case, and or Outreach International teams that they can be. I just can't speak highly enough of them in terms of the value they've delivered for us, and how effectively they work with our partner community.
So would you say that they're mainly benefiting you guys through just like being there for the community more, and like with the structuring of using the systems and that you're building? Or I guess I'm still kind of confused on what exactly they're doing for your group.
Well, I think, often when you look at it, I don't know how your prior projects have gone, whether you've used NGOs, participating partner NGOs along with your community-based organization, but many EWB chapters have that kind of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily because, well, you can sustain the relationship between your chapter and your community-based organization directly. It can be a real benefit to have people in country who have got closer access and more continual access to the community, and can assist with matters that can range from helping with needs assessments to helping with monitoring, depending on how you're structured and how the country or regional office of EWB is structured and so forth. They can also, in our case, they particularly in the composting latrines case, they actually handled procurements and builds for us, and worked that piece of it for the composting latrine projects, where we were not using the full up country office infrastructure to do that. In our composting latrines, that's how that was handled. Was we had help from Alcance in terms of actually executing the project. So that was important in terms of placing procurements and getting materials delivered, getting builders on board, that sort of thing. That may not be necessary for you or appropriate for you, depending on what kind of resources are available in country from the EWB country office or regional office.
Yeah, so we do work with a NGO named Engineers in Action.
Yes, I know about them.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're very effective, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that we do have some mixed feelings about them because they're overall good, offer a lot of help to us for ordering materials and helping us get to the actual community from where we land in the airport and and getting to the hotel and stuff. But sometimes they don't deliver the right materials that we order from them. And sometimes we think that they're overcharging us. So it might be helpful to have like a separate organization that's kind of looking at this too, and making sure that things are done fairly.
Yeah, and that sounds like that would require some sensitivity to pull that off successfully, but that it might be beneficial there. I don't know whether you've used the engineers in action in helping identify communities and helping identify needs and so forth, or whether that's something where the Alcance, Bolivia, and Outreach International teams could be helpful to you, or if you're already past that point that you have your projects identified and your pipeline is full. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So we're kind of wrapping up one of our projects in Bolivia, but we also work with a nearby community that we're still probably going to be helping for the next, I don't know, 4 to 8 years or so. And so it could be helpful for that. But yeah, I'm wondering how that our NGO, Engineers in Action, would kind of react to.
Yeah, that's where I would think that would take some sensitivity.
Yeah.
Because as I recall, they were kind of a one-stop shop in terms of,
Right.
I mean, I remember it at conferences hearing about their work and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, they've pretty much been doing everything for us that we need, like in country, ordering materials, delivering us places, and also getting survey and feedback from the community.
Yeah, and there would be in my view, that would be a pretty strong overlap with the kinds of things that I've found the Alcance team in Nicaragua to be very helpful doing. Although we have some similar, it's a little different, but we have some coordination that's not dissimilar in that, we use country office, the Nicaragua country office, engineering support for field inspection, for presence, and we use them for ordering materials and so forth, rather than on the EWB side, rather than using the Alcance team for our water supply project work in particular, and for placing. So that has been the way we've handled that, and so that's something to consider.
Logan, how do you think this could work with Uganda?
With Uganda, yeah, I think we have the opportunity there to make a lot more significant choices as we're at the beginning in this project. The community is a lot bigger in Uganda than Bolivia. I'm not sure how big your community is in Nicaragua, but how big would you say like Azazila and Kalani are? Just like a couple hundred? Whereas in Uganda, our community is about 1,000 people. So yeah, I think it'd be really great to get any sort of assistance there, because we're post-assessment and we're trying to figure out what are the feasible options and how are we going to pay for them, things like that.
Right. And I don't recall what kind of presence Outreach International has in Uganda. I just don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look, but I've never had occasion to need to look, and so I don't know.
Yeah, definitely something worth looking into for sure.
Rachel or Roll, do you guys have questions?
Yeah, I had a sort of related question. So I guess I understand that there's a little bit of overlap between our kind of partner with NGOs and kind of what Alcance might do, but how did like the day-to-day involvement change between when you guys were there and not there?
We were able to, in the case of the composting latrines, basically, my involvement was my time there was quite limited, and the work continued with Outreach International's Alcance, Nicaragua team to complete the work. I mean, it basically to provide the reporting, the financials that I needed in that case to fulfill reporting for that was a Rotary Global grant as opposed to an Engineers Without Borders project, but I was able to, they were able to provide all the financial documentation and receipts and all that sort of thing. So that worked out quite well. When we these are a couple of different modes that we've worked in Nicaragua. And so on the water supply project, we've had the luxury of having the country office team there so that we're able to rely both on them for things that we need and for Alcance for things that might require someone who's more closely embedded with the community on a regular basis, as opposed to having to have the country office field engineer, EWB field engineer, come over for a site visit or to be present during some piece of the work and so forth.
And I guess my second part for that question was, what were the costs for, or if there were any costs for working with Outreach International? Like, what were they like?
That's one of the bonus things here, I guess one might say, is that when we were working on the composting latrines, they had costs for things like transportation costs and fuel and so forth, but they performed these services out of their own budgets, if you want to think of it that way. So they weren't charging us staff time, so to speak. Whereas the country office, we pay and it's not unreasonable to do that. But in the case of Alcance, Nicaragua, they are underwritten by Outreach International to do this kind of community work. And so we didn't have additional charges associated with their support to us.
That's pretty cool to hear. Yeah, I know our project in Uganda, we had a kind of unexpected fee when working with the country office.
Yeah, well, ours were not unexpected, but they're there.
Yeah, I guess you could say it's expected now. But
Got it.
So,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Earl.
oh, sorry, I was gonna say those are all the questions I had.
Okay. I was just gonna ask, like, what do you think are like the main differences then just between like an NGO like Engineers in Action and Alcance and Outreach International?
I think that that Outreach International and Alcance would say, look, we don't bring engineering per se to the table.
Okay.
We're community organizers and community facilitators, and that's the strength that they bring to the table. They can perform other functions like procurements and supervise and direct builders, but they're going to be relying on you or the EWB team for engineering decisions and engineering expertise, perhaps more. I mean, I would presume more than Engineers in Actions does. I don't know Engineers in Actions capabilities, but I expect that's the case. And I think that capability also varies from country office to country office. So in Guatemala, the country office there has engineering talent to be able to do engineering designs and so forth on behalf of chapters. At least so far in Nicaragua, they would have to hire that help for you. They don't have it in-house in the country office. And that's, I don't mean to jump from Engineers in Actions and NGO and a discussion about their capabilities and differences between Outreach International to country offices, but I just think that's an example of one of the differences. And it may be a difference in terms of what the country offices or regional offices offer as well. I don't know how the situation is in Bolivia and Ecuador for those offices.
Yeah, beyond like helping us make like looking over materials lists, Engineers in Action doesn't really provide a whole lot of engineering specific services,
Okay.
but
They charge us an engineering fee every time though.
yeah.
So the one question, I think you already answered it, but I just want to make sure, Austin. It sounds like in one case you're kind of ramping down a project, but you're looking to ramp up another project that's close by. But you already have identified that community. Have you already initiated assessments and trips and so forth for that community and are working your way up that curve? Okay.
Yeah, I think in Bolivia especially, we're coming in, we've worked, our chapter has been working there for 10 plus years. And after the pandemic, a lot of that institutional knowledge got lost. And so last summer we traveled and we did our best to continue implementation, but the entire situation was pretty unclear to us. Now that we have a better idea of it, we're hoping to go back this year and make big steps in wrapping up the one project we've talked about, transitioning it to monitoring evaluation. And then the other one, we're doing work to try to get it back on track. So we're going to be hiring like local contractors to, I guess, Bolivianize the design, make it more affordable, more usable. Not our designs, from before us were pretty American, and it's been causing problems with even just dimensions and stuff like that. So our goal this year is to kind of get a schedule and a budget out of it, be able to tell the community when things are going to be done.
Gotcha.
Just have everything on track. Yeah.
Yeah. So depending on how long you want to continue in the area, where I think Outreach International's teams like Alcance Nicaragua, Alcance Bolivia can be extremely helpful, is identifying community needs and opportunities for you, and building the relationships if you don't already have them. Relying on their relationships with those communities to feed forward potential project information that might be of value to you. But it sounds like at this point you're ramping up one, you're ramping down another one. That's maybe a little further down the road for you if you intend to stay in the region and stay and work in those areas, or depending on where Alcance's I say Alcance, I know it's Alcance Bolivia, but I don't know what all communities they're working in and whether they align well with where you are or where you might want to go next in terms of in-country locations. But that's something that I think they're extremely effective at helping communities surface what is important to them, what they need, and then how to help them get resources to help address those needs and grow community leadership to meet those needs. That's where they're very, very effective. And teaming up with EWB chapters can be, an effective response to meeting those needs. Or teaming up with EWB teams and Rotary clubs if there's that opportunity.
So is Alcanza and Outreach International connected at all, or?
Yeah, basically Outreach International is the parent organization. It's a US 501c3 nonprofit. And then they have in-country teams that operate on their behest. And as in the case of Alcance Nicaragua, which really means, Alcance is Spanish for outreach, right? So it's Outreach Nicaragua. And so instead of Outreach International, it's their It's their arm in Nicaragua. So that's the connection. And they receive a package of funding from Outreach International that covers their, a certain level of staffing and a certain level of other office and transportation expenses that keep them on the air to do this work in Nicaragua. And I think they use the same model in other countries as well. So that would be why there's an Alcance in Bolivia. Did that clarify it?
Yeah, for sure. I think those are all my main questions.
Sure.
Did
Thank
you
you
guys
both.
have anything else?
All righty. Well, if other questions arise, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to talk about our experience with them and so forth. As I say, I'm not that up to speed about how the situation in Bolivia is and their relationships there in communities. So that I am not as helpful with. Can't be as helpful with.
Well, I mean, I think this is very helpful for kind of understanding what these organizations are about and if we should pursue a partnership with them. So,
Okay, good
yeah,
enough.
thank you.
You bet. All right. You guys have a good balance of the week.
Yeah, you too.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.